I always believed that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and did the right thing, life would reward you with stability and happiness. I never expected perfection. No marriage is flawless, but I thought what Jessica and I had was strong. Looking back now, I realized just how blind I was. That night, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie, trying to shake off the exhaustion from another grueling workweek. The company's annual corporate party wasn't exactly my idea of fun, but it was expected. Smiling, networking, making small talk, all part of the role. Jessica was already dressed, standing by the door, scrolling through her phone with an air of impatience. "We're going to be late," she muttered without even glancing up. She looked stunning in a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, and for a moment, I just admired her. But something felt off. "You seem tense," I said, grabbing my jacket. She finally looked up, her expression unreadable. "It's been a long day. Let's just go." That wasn't like her, this detached, almost irritated tone. I should have pressed her on it. I should have asked what was wrong. But I didn't. The venue was a luxury hotel ballroom, buzzing with the sounds of soft jazz, clinking glasses, and the murmur of corporate small talk. I felt out of place the moment we walked in. But Jessica, she came alive. Her posture straightened, her eyes scanned the room with purpose, and then, just like that, she was gone. 1 second, she was at my side. The next, she had melted into the crowd, slipping effortlessly into conversations like she belonged somewhere else entirely. I tried to brush it off. Grabbed a drink, nodded along to conversations, laughed when it felt appropriate. But something gnawed at me. A whisper in the back of my mind telling me something was wrong. And then, I saw her. Across the room, she stood far too close to another man. At first, I couldn't see his face, just his broad shoulders and the way he held himself with the kind of effortless confidence that came with power. When he turned slightly, recognition hit me like a punch to the gut. Daniel Carter. An executive at our firm. Charismatic. Wealthy. The kind of guy who always got what he wanted without having to try too hard. And right now, he wanted my wife. Jessica was laughing at something he said, her body language open, inviting. Her hand brushed his arm in a way that made my stomach tighten. She looked at him in a way she hadn't looked at me in a long time. My grip tightened around my glass. I forced myself to stay rational. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just friendly conversation, a casual touch, nothing more. But deep down, I already knew better. I started toward them, my heart pounding against my ribs. When Jessica noticed me approaching, a flicker of something, guilt? Panic? Flashed across her face before she quickly masked it with a practiced smile. "Oh, Ryan," she said, her voice light, too casual. "I was just talking to Daniel about the new marketing strategy." I turned to him. He didn't flinch. He didn't look guilty. If anything, he looked amused. "Nice to see you, Ryan," he said smoothly, extending a hand. I shook it, gripping harder than necessary. "Likewise." Jessica placed a hand on my arm, her touch light, dismissive. "We were just catching up." Catching up. The words echoed in my mind, bouncing between denial and cold realization. I could have played along. Could have pretended I didn't notice the way she had forgotten my existence the moment she walked into this room. But I wasn't that naive. "Catching up," I repeated, keeping my voice even. "Then you won't mind if I join you?" Jessica hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Daniel chuckled, swirling the whiskey in his glass like this was all some kind of joke. "Of course not. The more, the merrier." And in that moment I knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. Something was happening, right in front of me. And this was just the beginning. I stood there, forcing a smile, pretending I wasn't analyzing every glance, every shift in posture, every tiny flicker of emotion between them. Jessica was always good at controlling her expressions, but I had been with her long enough to catch the small things, the momentary hesitation before she spoke, the way she clutched her champagne glass a little too tightly. "We were just talking about upcoming projects," she said, her voice breezy. Too breezy. "Daniel has some interesting ideas about streamlining the marketing approach." Daniel smirked, swirling his drink like this was all just a game to him. Maybe it was. I nodded, jaw tightening. Right. I'm sure it's fascinating. Jessica shifted uncomfortably, her fingers gripping the delicate stem of her glass. I knew that look. She didn't want me here. That realization hit harder than it should have. I was an outsider in my own marriage. Before I could say anything else, someone from the firm called Daniel over, giving him an easy escape. He clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends, then leaned in a little too close to Jessica as he said, "We'll catch up later." I watched him walk away, my pulse pounding in my ears. Turning back to Jessica, my smile was gone. "You seem pretty close to him." She rolled her eyes, sipping her drink as if my question was ridiculous. "Ryan, don't start." "I'm not starting anything," I said evenly. "I'm just asking a question." She let out a sharp breath, tilting her head back like she was summoning patience. "He's my colleague. We work together. That's all. That's all," I repeated, because from where I was standing, it looked like a little more than just work talk. Her gaze sharpened, her annoyance bleeding through now. "You're being ridiculous." Maybe I was. Maybe I was just another jealous husband seeing problems where there weren't any. But deep down, I knew better. Before I could press her further, one of her co-workers appeared out of nowhere, laughing, grabbing her arm, pulling her toward the dance floor. Jessica let them drag her away without even glancing back at me. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look for me. She didn't care. And as I stood there alone, drowning in the gut-wrenching realization of it all, I knew I had already lost her. Not in the obvious way. Not yet. But emotionally. She was already gone. I moved to the bar, needing something stronger than whatever watered-down cocktail I'd been sipping. As I waited for my drink, I glanced across the room, watching her. She was dancing now, twirling under the golden lights, her laughter ringing out. Light, carefree. She looked happy. More than that, she looked free. And I hated that it wasn't because of me. For years, I had done everything I could to be the man she needed, supportive, stable, dependable. But standing there, watching her from the sidelines, I finally saw it. I wasn't the man she wanted. I downed my drink in one swallow, the burn doing nothing to dull the ache in my chest. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, just existing, fading into the background of my own life. The party buzzed around me, music, conversation, laughter, but none of it touched me. Then I saw it. Jessica slipping away from the dance floor, weaving through the crowd toward the hotel's balcony. And Daniel following right behind her. I didn't hesitate. Glass in hand, heart hammering, I walked toward the balcony doors, my stomach twisting with the weight of everything I already knew but didn't want to admit. And what I saw next shattered the last piece of denial I had left. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You can only decide what to do next. The cool night air hit me as I stepped onto the balcony, but it did nothing to calm the fire raging inside me. The sounds of the party faded behind me, muffled by the heavy doors I had just walked through. Jessica stood near the railing, her back to me, gazing out at the city skyline. The glow of the streetlights below cast a golden shimmer over her silhouette, making the moment look almost picturesque, if I hadn't known better. And then there was Daniel. He leaned against the railing beside her, his body angled toward her in a way that was anything but friendly, anything but professional. He was relaxed, confident, like a man who knew he had already won before the game had even started. I hesitated, gripping my glass so tightly my knuckles turned white. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I had misunderstood. But then I saw it. Daniel reached out, his fingers grazing her wrist, his thumb pressing briefly against the inside of her palm. Not an accident. Not casual. A deliberate move. And Jessica didn't pull away. She didn't step back. She didn't even flinch. She let it happen. Something twisted violently inside me, so hard and fast that for a second, I couldn't breathe. For years, I had been the kind of man who believed in trust, in patience, in giving the benefit of the doubt. I had ignored the late nights at the office, the hushed phone calls, the way she turned away when I reached for her. I had convinced myself that marriage had its rough patches, that we were just in one of them. But this wasn't a rough patch. This was a choice. And it wasn't mine. I stepped forward, clearing my throat. The sound was sharp, cutting through the stillness. Jessica turned first, her eyes widening for just a fraction of a second before she quickly masked it with an unreadable expression. Daniel, on the other hand, barely reacted. If anything, he looked amused. "Ryan," Jessica said, her voice carefully controlled. "I didn't know you were out here. Liar." Daniel took a sip of his drink. Watching me like this was all mildly entertaining. "I needed some air," I said, my voice calm despite the storm brewing inside me. "What about you two?" Jessica tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, one of her nervous habits. "We were just talking." Just talking. The words hit me harder than they should have. Not because of what she said, but because of how easily she said it. How effortlessly she spun the lie. How little she seemed to care that I was standing right there, watching it unfold. I turned to Daniel. "Is that what we're calling it?" His smirk widened slightly, and I had the sudden violent urge to knock it right off his face. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Jessica must have sensed it because she quickly stepped between us, placing a hand on my arm. "Let's not do this here," she murmured under her breath. "Not at the party. Not at the party. Not here." As if the location mattered more than the betrayal. I exhaled slowly, stepping back from her touch. "You're right," I said evenly. "This isn't the place." She relaxed slightly. But it was short-lived. Because then I looked her dead in the eye and said, "But we will talk tonight." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, next to Daniel, next to the man she had chosen, whether she realized it or not. As I left, I caught a flicker of something in Daniel's expression. Something smug. Something victorious. Like he had already won. And that was the moment I decided. He hadn't. Not yet. The drive home was suffocatingly silent. Jessica sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress. I kept my hands locked on the steering wheel, my jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might snap. My mind was racing, replaying every second of what I had seen. The way she stood too close to him. The way she let him touch her. The way she looked at me and lied like it was nothing. I gripped the wheel harder. The house felt different when we walked inside, like it wasn't really mine anymore. This was the home we had built together. Choosing the furniture, painting the walls, making it a place where we were supposed to grow old together. But now, as I stood in the living room, all I could see were the ghosts of a marriage I no longer recognized. Jessica set her purse down on the counter, then crossed her arms as she turned to face me. "All right," she said, her voice tight. "Let's just get this over with." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Get this over with?" I shook my head in disbelief. "You say that like this is some kind of inconvenience, like I'm the one causing a problem." She sighed, rubbing her temples like I was giving her a headache. "Ryan, nothing happened. You're blowing this way out of proportion." I took a slow step forward, my gaze locked onto hers. "So that's what we're doing? Pretending that what I saw tonight was nothing?" Her expression hardened. "I was talking to a colleague. That's all." Anger tightened in my chest like a vice. "Talking," I repeated, my voice low, controlled. "He touched you, Jessica. You didn't pull away. You let him." She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. "Are you sleeping with him?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed into a glare. "How dare you?" she snapped, her voice laced with offense. "You seriously think I would cheat on you?" I held her gaze, searching for something. Guilt, remorse, even a flicker of the woman I once knew. But all I saw was defensiveness. "I don't know what to think anymore," I admitted, my voice quieter now. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything that had gone unsaid hung between us, heavy and suffocating. Then she scoffed, shaking her head. "You know what? I don't have to stand here and be interrogated like some criminal." She turned on her heel, heading for the stairs. Something inside me snapped. "This is what you do, isn't it?" My voice rose, stopping her in her tracks. "You twist things around. You make me feel like I'm the one being unreasonable. Like I'm the bad guy for noticing that my wife has checked out of our marriage." She didn't turn around. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. My voice dropped, quieter this time. Just tell me the truth, Jessica. Do you still love me? Silence. It stretched on for too long. Each second another nail in the coffin of what we once had. And then finally she spoke. I don't know. The breath left my lungs. It wasn't an outright confession. But it was enough. Enough to tell me she had already made up her mind. Maybe not about Daniel. Maybe not about cheating. But about us. She didn't know if she loved me anymore. And somehow, that hurt more than any affair ever could. I nodded slowly, swallowing past the lump in my throat. All right. She finally turned to face me, her arms crossed again, her expression unreadable. All right what? I looked around the house. The life that was supposed to be ours. But I wasn't blind anymore. I'll make this easy for you, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You don't have to figure out if you still love me. I'll decide for you. Her brows furrowed, confusion flickering across her face. I took a deep breath and said the words that felt like both an ending and a beginning. I'm leaving. Her eyes widened, and for the first time all night, I saw something real. Not guilt. Not defiance. But fear. Maybe she thought I would always be here. That no matter what she did, no matter how far she pulled away, I would never actually leave. But she was wrong. Because the truth was, I already had. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think Jessica did either. She stayed upstairs in our bedroom while I sat downstairs on the couch, staring at the ceiling, drowning in a silence that wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. It was the kind of silence that settles between two people when there's nothing left to say. By morning, the house felt different. Maybe because I already knew I wasn't going to be here much longer. I went through my usual routine on autopilot, showering, getting dressed, making coffee. But everything felt foreign now, like I was just a visitor passing through a life that no longer belonged to me. Jessica came downstairs as I was pouring my coffee. She looked like she hadn't slept, her hair a little messier than usual, her eyes tired. But she didn't say anything at first. She just walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter, watching me. Finally, she spoke. So that's it. I didn't look at her. What do you mean? She let out a short, humorless laugh. You're just leaving? Just like that. I turned to face her, studying her expression. There was no anger, no desperation, just confusion, like she genuinely didn't understand how we had gotten here. And maybe that was the most heartbreaking part of all. Because I had spent so much time fighting for this marriage, while she had spent just as much time pretending nothing was wrong. I'm leaving, I said simply. Because I don't think there's anything left to fight for. And if I'm the only one who still cares, then what's the point? Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. I let out a bitter laugh. Fair. I repeated. Jessica, I asked you last night if you still loved me, and you said, I don't know. Do you have any idea how much it took for me to even ask you that question? She looked away, gripping the water bottle so tightly her knuckles turned white. I sighed, rubbing my face. Look, I'm not interested in fighting. I just want to move on with my life. My voice dropped, quiet but firm. You clearly already have. Her head snapped up at that. What's that supposed to mean? I scoffed. Do I really need to spell it out? Daniel, the way you look at him, the way you let him touch you. If you haven't cheated already, you were damn close. Her face paled. But she didn't deny it. She didn't even try. And that told me everything I needed to know. I set my coffee down, suddenly not wanting it anymore. I'm quitting my job today, I said, voice flat. Jessica's eyes widened. You're what? I'm quitting, I repeated. I'm not working at the same place as the man my wife emotionally checked out of our marriage for. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came out. For a brief second, I wondered if she regretted any of this. If she ever looked at me and wished she had made a different choice. But then I reminded myself that none of that mattered anymore. I turned and walked toward the stairs. I'll pack some things and be gone by tonight. Ryan. Her voice was suddenly quiet. Uncertain. I stopped at the base of the stairs, but I didn't turn around. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then she finally asked, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, letting the weight of everything settle. Then I told her the most honest thing I had said in years. "No. But I know it's what I need." And then I walked upstairs, leaving behind the woman who had left me long before I had realized it. Packing a suitcase for a life I hadn't planned on leaving felt surreal. Every item I placed in the bag, shirts, shoes, my laptop, a few personal documents, felt like another piece of the life I was walking away from. The closet was still half full. My side barely touched except for the small section I was emptying. It was like standing in the wreckage of a house that had burned down, with a few untouched rooms remaining, reminders of what once was. Downstairs, I heard Jessica moving around, opening and closing cabinets, pacing in the kitchen. I could picture it, arms crossed, biting her lip, debating whether or not to come upstairs and stop me. But she wouldn't. I knew that now. She had already chosen her path. And I was no longer part of it. I zipped up my bag, let out a slow breath, and walked downstairs. I paused briefly at the doorway of the kitchen. Jessica was sitting at the dining table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee she probably wasn't even drinking. She looked up when she saw me. Her expression unreadable. "You're really doing this," she said. More a statement than a question. "I have to." She inhaled sharply, then let out a slow breath. "And your job? You're seriously quitting?" I nodded. "I sent my resignation email this morning. I'll go in later to hand in my badge and clear out my desk." Her brows furrowed. "That's extreme, Ryan. You don't have to throw everything away." I let out a small, bitter laugh. "I'm not the one who threw everything away, Jessica." Her lips pressed together. She looked away, staring at the table like it held the answers she didn't have. I didn't want to stand here and argue. Nothing would change. "I'll come back for the rest of my things later," I said, adjusting the strap of my bag over my shoulder. "I just need space right now." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Where are you going?" I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know. A hotel for now. Maybe a rental after that." For the first time in years, I saw something in her eyes that resembled regret. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I turned toward the door, gripping the handle, feeling the weight of everything pressing against me. "Ryan." Her voice was softer this time. I paused. But I didn't look back. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. I closed my eyes, swallowing down the lump in my throat. I could have said so many things. That she had hurt me. That she had been hurting me for a long time, long before Daniel. That love isn't just about intentions, it's about choices. But none of it mattered now. So instead, I just said, "Goodbye, Jessica." And then I walked out the door, leaving behind the woman who had stopped being my wife long before I had realized it. Leaving the house should have felt like a moment of liberation. But instead, it felt like walking away from a fire I had spent years trying to put out, only to realize it had already burned down to ashes long before I had accepted it. I didn't look back as I got into my car. I knew if I did, I might hesitate. And I couldn't afford that. Not now. The streets were eerily empty as I drove away. The early morning light stretched long shadows across the pavement. I had no destination in mind, no hotel booked, no one to call. I just drove, letting the weight of what had just happened settle into my bones. I had walked out on my marriage, on my home, on my job. And yet, somehow, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was, I had been leaving for a long time. This was just the first time I actually had the guts to do it. I passed a roadside diner and, on impulse, pulled into the parking lot. My stomach was in knots, but I hadn't eaten since the party, and I needed something normal. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The place was nearly empty, save for a waitress behind the counter and an older man nursing a cup of coffee in the corner booth. I slid into a seat near the window, staring out at the highway, wondering how many other people had driven away from their old lives today. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind smile, walked over and poured me a cup of coffee before I even asked. "You look like a man who could use something strong," she said. I let out a small, dry chuckle. "You have no idea." She gave me a knowing look. "Heartbreak or job trouble?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "Both." She nodded like she'd heard this story 100 times before. "Well, let me tell you something, honey. You'll survive both." I wanted to believe her. I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth spread through me, trying to convince myself she was right. That this wasn't the end of my life. It was just the end of this chapter. But as I sat there, staring down at my reflection in the dark surface of my coffee, I realized something else. I wasn't just mourning my marriage. I was mourning the man I used to be. And I wasn't sure who I was without him. I sat in that diner for a long time, letting the coffee go cold in my hands as I processed everything. The weight of what I had lost still lingered. But somewhere underneath it, something new was taking shape. A quiet realization. I wasn't broken. I was free. For years, I had carried the weight of a marriage that was falling apart, convincing myself that if I just held on tighter, fought harder, things would fall back into place. But love isn't something you fight to keep. It's something that grows when both people choose to nurture it. And Jessica had stopped choosing me a long time ago. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting that I had been alone in this marriage for far longer than I realized. But now, sitting in a quiet diner, with nowhere to be and no one to answer to, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I hesitated for a moment before dialing a number I hadn't called in months. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Ryan, man, it's been a while." For the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. "Yeah, it has." I exhaled, glancing out the window at the endless stretch of road ahead of me. "Noah, listen. Are you still looking for someone to help with that startup project?" There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Hell yeah, I am. You finally ready to get out of that corporate grind?" I leaned back in my seat, nodding to myself. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." By the time we hung up, I had something I hadn't had in a long time. A plan. I wasn't just walking away from something. I was walking toward something. A new career. A new life. A version of myself that wasn't defined by my past mistakes or the love I had lost. I paid for my coffee, left a generous tip, and stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in streaks of gold and orange. A new day. A new beginning. I got into my car, started the engine, and instead of looking back, I drove forward. For the first time in years, I was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.